Mm, Thanks, Judith. And there's a number of staff members on with me as well. So Judith's on. I'm not sure who else is on because I can't see the the box here. But anyway, we're on. Um, what I'll say is, if you have questions, just maybe hang on to them till the end, unless it's really pertinent to what we're doing. Or if you'd prefer, and by the way, we're due to finish around 2 o'clock. I am quite happy to stay on as long as you want and answer any of your questions and talk to you about your club structures. Uh, Similar to that, we're quite happy to for you to contact us afterwards. So you've got your four development officers, as well as obviously in Ulster Hockey, you've got your own development officers who can field any questions you have on coach education, or I'm contactable directly as well. And I'm more than happy to sit down with you, your club's committee, and talk you through your club structures and give you some of the best advice that we've seen over the years. So we'll kick off and we'll try and get through this. So just what I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about assessing where you are at the moment, your existing structures, and then where we can improve them. A little bit on our pathway and our coaching courses, how you can develop your coaches within your own club as well, which is something that not a lot of clubs have really think about and look to develop themselves. And then some of the club structures, and then with time for questions at the end. Now, I have no problem with you putting your hand up if you've something really pertinent to what we're doing on the slide at the time. But if you want to hang on to them till the end, that's fine as well. I don't really mind which way you want to do it. Okay, so just some basics for you, just the importance of coach development. The main thing for us really as an organization is we want players that are capable, okay, capable to whatever their potential is, whether that's, playing on your senior twos or whether that's going on to play for your province or your country, okay? And then the second bit of that is retention. Those of you who work in businesses will know it's a lot easier to keep a customer than it is to attract a new one. And certainly the investment into that, it's the same for us. It's so much easier for us to retain a player than it is for us to go out and recruit players. So if you get your coaching structures right, that retention falls into place. It means that if you have 30 under 12s at under 12, by the time they get to under 16, under 18, you might still be hanging on to 25 to 30 of those players. Whereas what we're seeing at the moment is the 30 under 12s will drop down to maybe 18 to 20, and you've lost 10 players over that period, which is what we're trying to avoid. That then obviously leads into sustainable growth. And it means that it becomes a lot more predictable for you as well to manage your club. So if you know that you're going to have 25 players who've remained in the system from under 12 to under 16, it's a lot easier for you to plan ahead in terms of your senior teams, in terms of your coaching requirements and all that sort of stuff. Okay. This is the biggest one for us, is consistency in coaching standards. So making sure that each child at each age level is given the right amount of coaching, the right technical information, the right tactical information, and that they've got decent competition structures under the guidance of a good coach. And I'll talk about it a bit more in a while, but it is something that we see as an issue at the moment. Um, and then obviously an investment in players and coaches ties them to your club. And again, that's something we'd like to see more of, and I'll talk about that in a while. Our overall message is that clubs need to be player centered. So the player is the most important part of your club. Okay. But the experience that those players get is delivered by your coaches. So that makes your coaches as important, if not just slightly less important. But we do need our coaches to feel part of the club, to deliver the best experience they can. And if we can get that right, then the four things above that all fall into place. Okay. The issues then come when you have a lack of structure, and I just talked about it there: inconsistent coaching quality across age groups. Okay, I obviously in my job I see a lot of club structures around the place. Some are excellent, some need a bit of development, some need a lot of development. And one of the things I notice is there is, even in some of our bigger clubs, an inconsistent coaching quality. And what that leads to is might have a situation. I have a club that I'm aware of where their under 12 team or their under 12 group are coached by a group of coaches, three of whom have played high level hockey. Okay. And they're also good coaches. Not everyone who's played high level hockey is a good coach, but in this situation, they are. Okay. So those kids are getting a really good experience. The group behind them have 5 or 6 extremely good volunteers who are really keen, and they're there every week, and they're running their sessions. But the quality of coaching between the group who have hockey experience And this group of volunteers who have very little hockey experience is huge. And that will have a bigger impact on the players as you go up. So making sure we resource each age group with qualified coaches, and there are ways to combat that if you don't have that really good hockey player who can go in and coach that group. That's the key for us in consistency. So sometimes you'll see like, oh, that under 16 team are really strong, but the under 14 team coming behind them aren't as strong. And it's not necessarily a difference in the quality of players. A lot of time it's the difference in the quality of coaching and maybe the intensity that they trained under. More higher qualified coaches or better qualified coaches tend to run more intense sessions from what we see, whereas less qualified coaches or less experienced coaches will run sessions that, are fine, but maybe not at the intensity you're looking for the age group you're working with. Okay. So we need to try and find that consistency across all of our age groups so that all of the children get the same opportunity as they move up. We're more likely to keep them that way. And we then find an over-reliance on coaches with varying experience. Okay. So that's that situation I've just described. Those impacts then, poor skill development. Okay. What that leads to is when children aren't good at a sport or they're not comfortable or competent in the sport. I'm not saying they have to be super duper players, but they have to be competent to play the game. If that's not there, they're more likely to drift away. Okay. And that's the responsibility of the coach. It does lead to reduced retention, and that also, particularly in the teenage years. There's lots of evidence, particularly on the girls' side of the sport, but it is there on the boys' side of the sport as well, where we do lose girls between 15 and 18. We've tried to combat that by introducing the Young Leader Award, for example, where if they don't want to play, maybe they can go into coaching or umpiring. And just trying to put other programs in place where maybe it's not about competitive hockey. Munster, in the last few years, introduced an under-18 league that has helped massively with retention. And that's really important as well. Leinster have had that in place for a while, as have Connacht. So it's something that we need to make sure that we're running so that there's a level for all players. But again, if their coaching experience, if their training experience is good, they're more likely to stay in the sport. Okay. And then obviously, if they're not having those experiences, there is limited progression for them, which means when they get up into the older age groups, they're less likely to stay playing. Okay. So this is Wayne Goldsmith. If you ever get to tune into Wayne, he's Australian. He'll often be around Europe. He'll travel. We'll see him in Ireland every now and again. He's one of the lead experts on coaching and coach education. And his little quote here at the end, I think, has a lot of meaning for us. Ultimately, your sport is your coaches. Coaches and coaching are the connection, the relationship builders, livers of the experience of your sport. No matter what your strategic plan says, no matter what your marketing plan might be, in the end, your sport is delivered day to day by your coaches. Invest in them and your sport success is assured. And that's the same for your club. If your club has a really good set of coaches, players stay, players remain in the game, they get a really good experience, they develop well, and then they go on to stay in your club at senior level and probably beyond that, whether it's masters hockey or it's coming back coaching themselves or volunteering or whatever it is. Okay. It's really, really crucial. And you look at all the successful clubs. I don't mean success in terms of trophies. I mean success in terms of retaining numbers and stuff like that. A lot of that comes down to the investment in coaches. And I live in Cork, one of the clubs down here who invested really heavily over a 5-year period in their club. At the time, I was the development officer, and they ran level 1 and fundamentals, level 1 and fundamentals. And they had the highest retention rate of any club in the province at the time, simply based on the back of good investment in your coaches and good sessions, and then the kids stayed in the sport. Okay. So a key part of this is figuring out where you are as a club and where you want to be as a club. And this won't come as any surprise to you. Some of you will be in a really good position coach-wise. You'll already know where you're going to be next year. You already know where you are. You already know what you need to close in on. And then I get other clubs as well who maybe haven't had a time to think about it. And we fully appreciate that you're all volunteers. So it's not necessary you've loads of time to do this. And as professional staff, this is something we think, oh, sure, everyone should do it. But we forget sometimes that we are working with volunteers who don't have the same amount of time as we do. But it is important that you spend some time on this because it will save you time in the long term. Okay. So this is the cycle we put our clubs through. We talk about going through. So what's your current position? What do we need to do to plan ahead? What are those needs? What actions do we need to undertake to meet those needs? And then we review it. So for a lot of clubs at the moment, we're coming towards the end of the season. Probably we'd like to do this maybe January, February, so that we're start planning for September 2026, but we are where we are now. Some of you will be in a review phase where we're thinking, how did the season go? What's the feedback from our coaches? What's the feedback from the players? Something simple as a player survey will help that. And then we need to figure out where we are with the current position. So 3 things to think about here. I just need to move this box slightly. Sorry, 1 sec. 3 things to think about here. How do we do this year with our ratio of players to coaches? Did we have enough coaches at all times for the number of players we have? We recommend under 12 down 8-1 and under 12 up 10-1. Okay. Did we have that number of coaches, and did they have the skill set required for us to have a season where the kids got a really good experience? I'm not talking about winning here. I'm talking about kids getting good experiences within their training sessions. The winning bit will look after itself from there. Okay. So, and that's a big question for me, is that coaching skill set. What's it like in the club? Where does it need improvement? So that takes us then into planning ahead. So for clubs with waiting lists, and there's a few of you on here who will have a waiting list, you will know your growth. You will know that you're going to take in 40. So you might have 50 kids applying for the club. You know you're going to take in 40 at under 8, and you know you're going to have 10 on a waiting list. And those 10 might filter in as a couple of kids drift away, but you're going to have 40 coming in at under 8. If your structures are right, you'll probably still have 38 to 40 of those going into under 10. So you can start to predict your growth the whole way up. And we are finding now that some of the programs are working, and some of the middle teenage groups are remaining in there. So, Church of Ireland, for example, down here, I was speaking to them recently, they managed to retain most of their kids between under 16 and under 18 last year. Okay. And a lot of clubs are in that position as well. So we know our expected growth. We know if we're going to need more coaches. We know if we're going to have to recruit more coaches. And you don't have to recruit someone with a level 2 or a level, high performance coach, but you might start looking at, we need to get another 3 or 4 parents in here and get them on the way up. They start as assistants on the field, and then we can maybe get them into coaching from there. How are we going to do that? Who's going to lead the recruitment? Who are we going to contact, and so on and so forth. So we really want to start planning ahead for where we want to go. And then we start looking at our needs and actions. So something as simple as a SWOT analysis. Where are your strengths and your weaknesses? What are the opportunities we have? What threatens us? Okay. A lot of clubs will be in a really good, strong position in terms of numbers, but not necessarily in terms of volunteers to service those numbers. Okay. What are the training needs of your coaches? Just add Ricky in there. What are the training needs of your coaches? And it's something that we only think about maybe late on. We should maybe be thinking now, well, we know we have X number of fundamentals coaches. We'd like to have X number of level 1 coaches. I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute. When are these courses on? Can we start telling people now that there's going to be a course in August that we'd love to get them on, or whatever it is, or come and talk to us and say, look, Phil, I've got 10 coaches here in the club. We'd like them to get through a fundamentals. And we say to you, like, what days are going to suit you? And we come in and we run them on those days for you. We're fairly flexible with how we run our coaching courses. Just so you're aware, if you're in Ulster Hockey run your coaching courses as opposed to us down south. Okay. And then any club supports that are also going to be required inside of that. And that can even go down to something as minuscule as how many hockey balls we have in the shed and how many hockey balls we're going to need when we get out in the field. Okay. It's something that coaches like myself pull our hair out when we don't have enough balls on the pitch and things like that. So that needs to be planned as well. And sorry, we just jumped ahead there one. And then reviewing. So this is a good time really to be, if you haven't done it already, this is a good time. Get your coaches feedback, give them a survey, an anonymous survey they can feed back into you. Get your players to do a survey and your volunteers. And then do an internal audit yourselves. Again, this doesn't have to be something that takes weeks and weeks. It can be done in a committee meeting over 20 minutes and you just discuss 4 or 5 topics, okay? And someone who's accumulated the survey feedback gives you the headline points in the survey and you go from there, okay? So we're not asking you to spend hours and hours on this, but certainly just have a good awareness of where you want to be and where you want to go forward to next year. A big thing that will help out with this is something like a coaching register. Okay, this is one, I popped this into, I just made this on Excel, okay? And it allows us to identify where the gaps are, where we're strong, and any training needs we might have. So I've just split the players here into primary school, secondary school, and senior players. Okay, you'll obviously, if you're doing this fully, you will have under 8s, under 10s, under 12s, and you'll probably go right up into, somebody will have under 18s. Somebody might even include this into the masters end. Okay, so the first two columns here, bar age group and name, you go into vetting and safeguarding one. So everyone in this club is vetted, everyone is safeguarding one. I probably don't need to underline the importance of safeguarding, particularly with the way legislation is now. So again, making sure I coach in a Gaelic football club where they're fairly lax on this, in my son's Gaelic football club, and I basically have to beg to be vetted. So we don't want to be in that situation. So let's make sure everyone is vetted and everyone is safeguarding one. That should be your number one priority. If we look at the primary school coaches here, so we've got, I'm just trying to identify some gaps in what we have here. So in that first one here, in the under 8s and under 10s, we're missing some fundamentals qualified coaches. Okay, so this might say to us, okay, we've got 4 coaches there who really could do with a fundamentals course. Let's get on to Hockey Ireland. Let's get on to our development officer. Let's see when there's courses on, or maybe we'd like to host one, and let's get those 4 coaches onto it. Okay, in our under 12 group, we've got quite a few. We've got 2 of our coaches have fundamentals done. Now maybe it's time for 1 or 2 of those to step up into level 1. Maybe we're going to make one of them the lead of our under 12s. That person should definitely have a level 1. So when are the courses on? Let's see if we can get those coaches onto courses. Not everyone has 6 hours to give to a fundamentals course. We understand that. So we also have the stepping stones courses over here. So that's what SS stands for. And there's a raft of these available. So we've 4 there at the moment. We're producing another 2 probably by the end of this year. So they'll be available as well. So phase P1 and P2, these are phase 1 and phase 2. These how to coach under 9s effectively and how to coach under 12s effectively is P2. And then we've 1 on 2v1s and 1 on an introduction to tactics. So again, there's some gaps identified here, and this is where we might want to put those coaches in. I'd love to know how many of we won't do it, but how many of you have a coaching register in your club? How many of you know where the gaps are within your coaching staff, shall we say, and within your coaching teams? Okay, and then when you move up into secondary level, so obviously the level's getting a bit higher here. We would want more level 1 coaches. So we have a level 1 coach at under 14 and under 16, but there is space there for another couple. We also have space for some of those to go on and do the box there. Go on and do some of the stepping stones courses. And this group here, it's a good time to do the 2v1s one if you haven't done it, or the introduction to tactics. When you're moving out of that small-sided games, the 5-a-sides and the 8-a-sides into 11-a-side hockey, really good time to do the introduction to tactics. And then we look at the top end. So you've got senior 3, senior 2, and senior 1 coaches. Really at this point, we might look at someone like our Ryan here, who's a senior 2 coach. Maybe he's going to step up in the next 2 years into a senior 1 coach. So this could be a good time for him to do level 2. Or we maybe get all these guys onto the 2v1 stepping stones, which will apply from, say, under 14 right up to under 12, even right up to lower division senior teams. So we can give you a template for this, or you can make your own. None of that's a problem. We'll give you a copy of the presentation at the end anyway. This is a really good method of just figuring out exactly where you are right now and exactly what your training needs are and what you can get done over the summer. So we're already running coaching courses. We ran in Limerick last week. We're running in Dublin this week. And we will run courses all over. Obviously, the 3 provinces down here, and Ulster will run courses in Ulster as well. So if you have specific needs, do contact us, because we are fairly flexible. So if you said to me, look, I have 12 for fundamentals build, but they can give you 3 hours on 2 midweek nights, we can go in and run a course on those nights. We have the developers available. Or if you'd prefer to do it all in one go on a Sunday, we can do that as well. None of that's a problem. And then obviously we run centralized courses, which you can just sign your coaches up to as well. Okay. Sorry, just on this side, sometimes you'll have additional courses you can do. So I've just included in here first aid and concussion training, which would be useful to have someone with first aid training, obviously with every age group. and ideally someone with concussion training at every age group as well. Okay, they're available from your sports partnership. This then is what our coaching structure looks like within the organization at the moment. The core courses here in the middle. Level 3 is being developed at the moment. That's at high performance level. So if you're working with under 12s and under 14s, you don't need to be there yet. There's plenty of time to get there. But fundamentals in level 1, our thoughts on fundamentals really would be anyone coaching at all, under 8s, under 10s, even early stage under 12s, really should have fundamentals done. It gives you the basics. I'll give you a bit more detail about the courses. A lot of you will know them already. And certainly then under 10, under 12 up lead coaches, we certainly would want them with the level 1. The technical detail that you learn on those courses is really beneficial to your players. The small corrections that mean that they can pass a ball harder, or they can be more accurate with a pass, or they can lift the ball over a stick with a bit more technical sort of flair or whatever it is. That's where you learn them on those courses, and trying to get your coaches on them. We understand that a 17-hour level 1 is a big ask for some of your coaches, but we'll split that up into 3 separate modules for them so they don't have to turn up over a full weekend. And just to get that technical information behind them before they go out and coach. Or if you've someone that's an experienced player, they may not necessarily be the best at managing a group or getting their message across or whatever it is. So that's where those courses become really, really important for your coaches to attend. Okay. And the CPD type courses here, so we've got one on coaching under 9s, one on coaching under 12s, an introduction to tactics, which is really useful for coaches stepping out of under 12, going into under 14. And then we've one on overloads as well, which is good from under 12s the whole way up. Particularly useful for experienced coaches who maybe aren't great on communication or things like that, or an inexperienced coach who doesn't have a lot of tactical information. Those courses are really useful. And then if you decide that you want to go further, we've got the FIH and the HF have a pathway. You can also do their courses, by the way. They have a level 1 and a level 2. Their first 2 courses are done online, so you don't get any practical coaching experience, whereas our courses are on field. So it's you delivering, you get feedback from us, and then you improve as you go. And then we have some additional things. So last year we would have had our Hooked conference in Dublin, which had 3 guest speakers, one from Germany who works in the Netherlands, Joy from Belgium, who has done a lot of research on female coaching, and we have a female coaching program based on the back of that now as well. And Mick McKinnon, who is, of course, our own women's assistant coach. And we do run other workshops. We are hoping this year, in the second week of September, to run 2 regional conferences, one in Dublin and then one in either Cork or Limerick. We're not sure yet, which will be kind of a half-day conference. And you just turn up to that and, there'll be 3 or 4 presenters on field presenting, and there'll be a chance to network and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for that. We'll let all the clubs know once that comes out. Sorry, just to mention on level 2, we'll be going out this week for expressions of interest for level 2. So if you have coaches looking to do level 2, it'll go out through the club secretary. So please get them to come in contact with us so that we know who is applying this year. And the course will be running in late May, June, and in August. Okay, so just a bit more detail on the courses. I've already kind of gone through it. This is what you're going to cover off. So if you are in that, if you have coaches in that under 11, under 12 group from under 7 up, it is a 6-hour course. You can do it from when you're 16. It covers basic techniques, how to break down those basic techniques and how to coach them back, and some of our small-sided game formats like Fun Fours. Okay, good example here be a volunteer who's come in at under 9, who has little coaching experience, or someone who has hockey experience but hasn't coached much, should I say, or someone who coaches a bit that hasn't much hockey experience. When you go to level 1, then under 12 to lower senior, it's quite a big, covers quite a big area there. It is 18 hours, it's 17 hours. And you also have to have completed fundamentals and safeguarding 1. Now, if you're an experienced coach, you can bypass fundamentals. We don't recommend it. And we have to apply to Sport Ireland when you do it. So if you can do the fundamentals, let's get the fundamentals done. The areas covered then is play, practice, play coaching, tactics and small-sided games. So this is really going beyond under 12s. And then the underage formats, Super 6s, Extreme 8s, and then obviously up to 11, B11. Then we go to level 2, which is a performance level course. This really you would want to be coaching certainly senior club level, inter-pro level. But if you were an experienced coach coming up through the senior ranks, it'd be a good time to do it as well. If you're a lead coach in a school, good time to do it as well. If you really would want to be coaching 11 aside to do it, and you would want to have some experience, some senior experience under your belt, either as a player or as a coach. Okay. And then level 3 is high performance. That's in production at the moment. So that 100 hours might become 80 hours, or it might become 120 hours. We don't know yet. As we negotiate with Sport Ireland on that one. That should be in place hopefully by the end of the year, all going well. And then our stepping stones courses. So these are about 2.5 hours. These are really useful if you want to give your coaches, upskill your coaches a little bit without them having to commit to a coaching course, a full coaching course. And these ones are nice because we come in and we do all of the delivery. We do all of the coaching. It's very much a kind of show and tell type workshop, as opposed to if you come on level 1, you do quite a bit of coaching over the 2.5 days. Whereas on this is us just coming in. This is the best way to do it. This is an effective way of running your 2v1s. This is an effective way of getting the message across to your players. And you literally walk in with a notebook and take notes, and we give you some resources afterwards. Okay. So for under 9s, it's a really good one for beginner coaches. You could do this pre-fundamentals if you have coaches who haven't done it. We come in and we show you how to use the Hooked on Fun resource and how to run a really good fun session for kids. And a lot of that is around, it's not necessarily around the actual stick and ball bit. It's around how you motivate the kids, how you make it fun for them, how you make it enjoyable. What we want to see with kids of all ages is that they're walking off the pitch with a big smile on their face. That's what we're looking for in that course. Then as we go up to effective coaching for under 12s, this is almost like a level 1 refresher. Covers a lot of what's on level 1, but at a slightly lower level. Okay, but again, it's about how you get the most out of your sessions for under 12s. And then attacking overloads is based on 2v1s and 3v2s and 4v3s. It's a really straightforward 2.5 hour workshop. It's all on field. We get a good group of kids who come in and they do all of the stuff, and we build their 2v1 abilities across the course. It's a really good one for your coaches to do. And then our introduction to tactics, that's designed just to help coaches transition from that sort of underage level of 5v5, 6v6, 8v8 into 11v11 coaching. We get a lot of lower division senior coaches on that course, and they find it really beneficial. So it will work across the board. And a lot of it was designed by Mick McKinnon, which was really helpful for us on stuff like the video that's provided for it and things like that. And you get some resources afterwards as well. So that's a useful course. Those we can run in club or we can run centrally for you. So we can either come to you to deliver them. So I delivered one last year to Cork Harlequins, where they just rolled out 14 or 15 coaches and we went in and ran introduction to tactics, or we can run them centrally. So sometimes we do them online, or we might run one in a club in wherever, and you just can sign people up individually to it. So we're running the 2v1s one tomorrow, for example, in Limerick, and it's free. You just sign up online. I think it's 15 or 20 euros, and you just turn up on the day. Okay, so those courses are there. They're a really handy one if you're going to reward your coaches or give them a training day. One of the things we find is that we tend to go from one end of the year to the other end of the year, and we've done nothing for the coaches. We even had a coffee morning for them or something like that. And what I advise clubs a lot of the time to do is have an in-service day for your coaches somewhere throughout the year, where you bring them in to give them a reward so that kids can stay at home and they don't train. The coaches come in, you give them, coffee and cakes, and that you give them a two-hour workshop out in the field. It doesn't have to be from us. It can be something that you run internally as well. And that leads me nicely on to club-led coach development. So as a national governing body, our job is to deliver these core courses and deliver any support we can as well. But clubs often don't realize some of you have huge resources within your club. If I look at a club like Loreto in Dublin, Inez is on here at the moment, your head coach is one of the most experienced coaches in the country. In Paul Fitzpatrick, he can easily run a coach development workshop for you. And there's loads of clubs in that space who will pay a head coach, and there's no reason you can't pay that head coach not to just coach your first team, to do some other stuff. So some of the things you can do here, I'll just start in the red quarter here. So in terms of developing yourself, so club investment, facilities and equipment. So having things like rebound boards or catch-it nets or stuff like that, making sure you have enough hockey balls on the field, making sure your coaches and your players get enough time and access to your facilities. Maybe you can get access to indoor. A lot of that will help support your coaches in trying to do what they're trying to do with your players. What kind of resources can you provide them? So we have resources, obviously, but there's hundreds upon hundreds of resources out there on the internet. One of the things I do on some of the coaching courses we deliver is, as the coaches are chatting, I'll get onto ChatGPT and I'll just type in, design a hockey session for me on passing and receiving on the move. And it'll do it in seconds. And then the coach will go, oh my God, I didn't realize we could get access to those types of resources. So, I mean, that's a free resource. But there are other ones where you can pay for them. I won't go into them, but there are websites out there where you can pay and you can get loads of sessions back free back for all of your coaches on that. We would really love to see every club have a coach coordinator, a coach developer. So sometimes we send out information on coaching courses or opportunities, and it goes to the club secretary, and who do amazing jobs, by the way, but it doesn't necessarily filter down to the coaches in a timely manner. And by the time it does, it's already gone. And that's not your club secretary's fault. They have loads going on their plate. But it's something that if we did have a dedicated club coach developer or a club coach coordinator who's a bit of experience in coaching, it would make our lives a lot easier, and it would make your coaches' lives a lot easier. So that's something you really should have within your committee positions. And then obviously we can invest by sending coaches on coach education courses. Okay, on the purple one down here, things on the club policy. These are really, really, really important. I know a lot of them, there's a lot of paperwork and stuff like that, but we have to have these things in places. So guidance documents, your safeguarding is all up to date. Your review surveys are done every year, so you make sure you get your player feedback and your coaches feedback and your volunteer feedback, and maybe you've done a SWOT analysis as well. One thing I will say on that, for the bigger clubs amongst us, so if I take the Gaelic Football Club I work in, it's called Nemo. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. When I say work, and I coach my under 10s, they have 3 children's officers. And that takes a huge amount off the children's officer. Whereas I've seen some of our hockey clubs who are big as well with 1 children's officer. It's an awful lot of work to put on one person. So it might be something you consider as putting a second or a third children's officer in, who will then become your lead children's officer the year after, so that everyone doesn't have to do. Some clubs have their children's officer in for 8 or 10 years, which is quite a long time. Other development opportunities up here in green. Can we use some coach mentoring and shadowing? A lot of you will have a very good, highly qualified first team coach. How often do your under 14 or under 16 coaches attend their sessions? How often are they invited to those sessions? How often do they go to the sessions and they're handed the session plan from that coach? Or how often does the head coach come down and watch one of their sessions to give them some advice? You've got huge resources within your clubs. Or that can be from a player who's played at a good level, or maybe you might have a coach from another sport in there who can come and give you some advice. Trying to use the resources you have in there, particularly amongst highly qualified coaches who shouldn't just run their 1.5 hour session on a Tuesday and do the same on a Thursday. There's a lot more you can get out of them within the club. And it doesn't have to be massively taxing on their time. Literally, some people can come to the session. I learned to coach by watching other coaches and by attending their sessions and going, oh, why did you do that? What was the purpose for that over there? And that's what we're looking for from club led. So you find someone within the club who can do this for you and mentor maybe some of your coaches, and you bring those coaches to them so that they're getting that experience anyway. Okay. There are non-hockey courses and webinars you can do on leadership, on first aid, on concussion. So other things that we can do to train up volunteers. Not everybody wants to be a coach. So you might have a volunteer that's assisting, and maybe there's somewhere else that they could be useful in the club if they're not comfortable on the field. Okay. Attending events, whether that's something like our own regional conferences or something like that, or non-hockey conferences or non-hockey events that are on. The sports partnerships tend to run some very good ones, or maybe bringing in a guest speaker. So can you bring in an ex-player? Or it doesn't have to be necessarily be an ex-player. It can be someone who comes in from outside the sport, or someone who's in the club that's maybe a business leader and can talk about communication or, leading groups or whatever it is. And then this blue one down here, which I think is the most neglected from what I see around, it's some way of rewarding your coaches. Not everyone has a clubhouse, I understand that, but there are, if you think outside the box a little bit, there are ways of doing things, okay? Host a coffee morning for your coaches. Host an awards night for your coaches, a thank you, get together for your coaches. Some of the clubs I've worked with down here when I was a development officer do it really, really well, and they don't have clubhouses. They can set up a marquee, or they can rent a hall or a room or something, and it's not a whole lot of hassle to bring in some cakes and some teas and coffees and just have people chat and do stuff like that, and then provide some informal opportunities for them to network and for them to develop. Okay. Our head coach is here. Do you want to ask him any questions? Okay. And I would try and do this twice a year, at least twice a year if I could, given how important your coaches are to your club. Finding ways of making them feel part of your club and feel part of the system and how they're improving players and making them feel appreciated is crucial, because it does have them coming back. Okay. And again, using my Gaelic football example, the club where there's always come on into the bar afterwards and have a cup of tea, and there's tea put on for you after the thing, and you chat with the other coaches, and that's how you improve as a coach and things like that. So it's well worth looking at. Okay. And there'll be other things that you can think of within your own club that will help your coaches that can be club led. Okay. So don't be afraid to, put stuff in place yourselves that will improve your coaches' knowledge, experience, or their social interaction with the club, because that's really important too. So just going to give you two examples of two coaches that we might look at that we've identified through our feedback and through our assessing of where we are. So Coach A here has been working with the under 12s. They're just in a standard role as a coach, and they're not moving groups next year. So they're going to stay at under 12, but they are going to take on the lead coach role. So what we're suggesting at under 12s, you'd have a lead coach, and then your coaches that deliver underneath that, and then your assistants underneath that. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So this person taking on their lead coach, for example, let's say they've done their level 1 already. Okay. Their ambition is to stay with their kids group, and they want to stay with their under 12s. So this might be a good time to get them onto the Attacking Overloads Stepping Stones workshop. And that might be their only training for the year, but let's get them onto something. Okay. And we might find some kind of a club-led opportunity. Maybe there's a cross-sport coach shadowing opportunity, or maybe they just go up and they watch some of the sessions with the under 16s or the under 18s or your senior coaches. Okay. Coach B then, on the other hand, they're coaching the senior 3s. They're an ex-player. They're currently the assistant coach senior 3s, and next year they're going to be the head coach of the senior 2s. So that's a really good time to really look at where they are. They've done their level 1. This now might be a good time. They've the ambition to be a senior 1 head coach. Okay. And there are coaches within your system who will have that ambition. Now it's a good time for them to do the level 2. So over the summer, they come to us in May. May, June, and August, they do their level 2, and then they go back in and they get support then from the senior 1 coaches when they're coaching the senior 2s, and they give us information. One of the questions I would have is how interactive is, if you have a senior 1 and 2, how interactive are your senior 1 and your senior 2 coaches? Are they talking to each other all the time, or is it 2 separate groups, or how does it work? That's a really useful thing. When I've been a senior 1 coach, bringing your senior 2 coach along with you is really useful, partly because when you decide you can step down, you might have someone to step in there, but also it's better development for your second team players, which ultimately will help your first team. So keeping that conversation open. So finding, again, that club-led opportunity for that person to do it. Okay. There should be enough of a menu there of coaching courses and resources for you to go, do you know what, we can get some of our coaches onto a course every year. It mightn't be the same coaches every year, but let's keep it ticking over so that the training standards remain high. And that brings me back to my very first slide when I talked about getting consistency across your age groups. So then just a little bit on club structures here. We're almost finished, so you have plenty of time for questions. Sorry, we'll go back here. What I'd like to see is, in every club, if I had a magic wand, club coach coordinator for every single club who we can contact directly. And we might add that in. We do add it in, I think, to the club affiliation form, but it's maybe 25% of the clubs will fill that in, or they'll just fill it in with the secretary's name, and then we're loading more work onto the poor club secretary. So it is worth trying to find someone, ideally someone with a level 1 under their belt with some coaching experience. But if you don't have that resource in your club, put someone in that position. We'll probably, towards the start of next season, run a one of these for club coordinators and the sort of club coach coordinators and the sort of stuff they can do. So keep that in mind, but do try and appoint someone. Okay. We want a lead coach qualified at all levels. Okay. And your minimum qualification is obviously fundamentals. So obviously you might be okay with that at under 8. But certainly as we get to under 10, under 12, under 14, we definitely want a level 1 qualified lead coach. Okay. The ratios I've already talked about. So 8-1 for under 12 down and 10-1 for under 12 up. Okay. Figure out how we're going to start to link our age groups. So again, in my development officer days, I often would see clubs where you'd have a junior section and a senior section, and there might be no actual link between the two other than eventually the kids go from under 14, under 16 up into the senior ranks, and then it's good luck and thanks, and the junior club keep running as they are and the senior club runs separately. That has to we've got to merge that into one so that we're a better club, so that we've a plan for the kids the whole way up, so that if I know that if you're starting at under 8 or under 10, that there's a pathway for you the whole way up into the senior end of the club. Okay. We have that in place in some clubs. We don't have it in every club, and it's not really thought about. It's just sometimes it's just how do I get them through under 8 and get them into under 10, and now it becomes somebody else's problem. But if you have a coach lead or a club coach lead in that position, that will get looked after. So we need to start how are we going to transition players up? What do we do with really talented players? What do we do with players who haven't moved on as quickly as we thought they might? What kind of competitions can we provide for them? That sort of stuff. And then how do we link into the senior club teams, which is what we've already talked about. But you do need to plan for player movement. And if you plan for player movement correctly, you'll get your coaching ratios correct for when they move up. Okay. You will see clubs where you lose numbers or you retain numbers you weren't expecting to have, and you're a coach down or you've a coach too many, and can we redeploy that coach somewhere else, or can we take a coach and train someone up to help with the numbers where they're a bit higher up. Okay. This is an example of what you might have in a club at an under 10 structure. Now I appreciate I've got 9 coaches in here for, we're going to say 32 under 10s. Okay. I know in practice it doesn't work like that. This is more of an ideal. So you still have your club coach coordinator who's leading maybe all of the underage groups. Okay. And then you've got a level 1 qualified head coach. Their job essentially is maybe not to actually coach on a day-to-day basis, but they set the program for the kids, for the training sessions. And while the blue coaches here, the training leads who've all got fundamentals under their belts, while they're delivering the session, the lead coach or the head coach is going between the groups, making sure everything's right, giving support to those coaches, and making sure those exercises are effective for the kids. And then underneath that, you have an assistant coach. Those assistant coaches don't have to be qualified. They don't have to know one end of a hockey stick from another, but they might be the ones that help you manage the group. They help you put out the cones, pick up the cones, whatever it is. And they start getting into the coaching role by working with someone else. One of the things we see in a lot of clubs is the blue coaches here a lot of the time are young coaches. And if you have a very good young coach, that's fantastic. And they should be able to lead a session in that case. A lot of the time, I'm going to say it, a lot of the time, some of those young coaches are there because they're being paid. And it's not necessarily always best practice in that case, because they don't necessarily care about the coaching session. They might just be there because they're going to get a tenner an hour or 15 euros an hour. And I appreciate we can't necessarily either recruit, loads and loads of volunteers, particularly in our really, really big clubs where you could have 100 children at under 12. But if you have that level 1 qualified head coach in place, then at least you have someone looking out for them and helping them and getting them to run sessions better and making sure that the technical stuff is correct. And we do see weaknesses in our players coming through the system where technical coaching hasn't been good enough, and making sure you've got that level 1 qualified head coach in place will help that. Okay. And we can produce a course for this or a workshop to help these head coaches at each age group to deliver really, really well. But the technical bit coming from those blue coaches is really important. Okay. I can't stress that enough. We need to make sure the technical coaching end is good. Kids need to be competent coming up through the age groups so that they stay in the sport. All right. The way the Dutch do it, by the way, and we spent some time in on an Erasmus program a couple of years ago, they will have this club coach coordinator, and then they have a technical coordinator, and then they have pitch leads, and then they have coaches underneath that, and then they have assistant coaches underneath that. And the way they do it very carefully, so the technical exercises that they're running are run by coaches who can run technical exercises on the field. So ex-players or people who've been trained up. And then the less technical exercises, things like the 4v4 game down at the bottom of the pitch, that's run by parents who maybe aren't hockey parents or weren't hockey players, but can run a game, a 4v4 game without much hassle. So they're very strategic in how they put out their coaches on a Friday night or whatever night the kids are training on. And again, I'd love our clubs to be a bit more strategic like that, so that you know what exercise you're going to take when you go out on the field, you know the technical information, and ideally it's been given to you because you're of that standard to deliver that exercise. Okay, so it's something worth bearing in mind when you are delivering or when you're getting out with your coaches. So just to kind of wrap up here as to what we would like to see and where we want to be. So obviously, above everything else, club welfare standards is crucial. So I've talked about safeguarding and vetting enough here, but you know we shouldn't have coaches out that haven't got safeguarding 1 complete. Get yourself a club coach coordinator if you don't already have one, and make sure that I have their details or we have their details on your affiliation form. We're not going to bombard them with information either, but we will tell you, look, there's coaching courses on here. Judith, after this webinar finishes, she's going to send out the courses that we have in place for the moment. The level 2 needs to be added to that. That will be added within the next week, and there'll be more courses. Just so you're aware, in Leinster this year, we have 2 level 1 dates. The level 1 date in August, there's one in June and one in August. The one in August is designed to be a bigger course, so we'll take 36 coaches onto that, but there will be 4 developers. So we won't be running what we normally do, which is 2 or 3 level 1s with 8 or 9 people on it. We're going for 1. So if you have level 1 coaches looking, they're the dates we're looking to get you on. We'll also run one in September, but that will be for college students. So try and get them on that one. If you have we run it the first week of September before they're back to university. So it's a good time to get those guys on it. But the main one for club coaches will run in August. So if you can't get on the one in June, try and get them onto the one in August. Those dates, Judith will send them out afterwards. Just going back to this, spend some time assessing where you are and what your plans are for next year, and maybe try and think ahead 2 to 3 years. Where do we want to be in 3 years? Do we want to have 3 under 18 teams, and how many coaches is that going to require? And how do we start training those coaches now so that when they get to that under 18 group, we're covered off? Okay, because sometimes we kind of go season by season, but having a 2 to 3 to 4 year plan in place will work better for your club. And then you can alter it as you go, but it means making smaller changes rather than redoing the plan each time. Take your actions to address those needs that you've identified, whether that's training up your coaches, whether that's recruiting more coaches, whether that's recruiting more players, or whatever it is. Take the actions now. It's a good time to do it so that you're ready for September. A lot of clubs tend, and I don't blame them, by the way, tend to get to the end of the season and kind of switch off until August. You could switch off, maybe you could come back in a bit later if you can get that planning done early. So there's an advantage to it. And then the other thing I will say is review and adapt your coaching structure regularly. Don't just do it at the end of the season. Maybe get to November, so September to November, and go, well, how are we getting on, guys? Let's have a look at it. Do we need any other supports here? How are the coaches getting on? And talk to your coaches on the ground, because they won't always come forward and say, actually, I need some help with this, or I really could do with an extra volunteer here. Or maybe we need some goalkeeping coaching, specialist coaching over here. Do we have someone within the club who can take the goalkeepers? And we work around it like that. Okay. I don't know if there's anything on any of those points, but I'm quite happy to take questions now for as long as you like. I can be here all afternoon if you like. It's not that I haven't got anything else to do. It's just I'd rather answer your questions and make sure you're happy. So if you have any questions, you can fire away. Or if you don't have any questions,